And now on the line is Janie Lazar, the chair of End of Life Ireland. Janie, welcome back to Near FM.
Darren, thank you very much for inviting me back on the show.
Okay, Janie, the last time I spoke to you on Near FM was about 9 months ago, and around that time, an Oireachtas committee was set up on the topic of assisted dying, and it just started working. A lot may have happened in the last months, Janie, and I know there is news on the committee in recent weeks. Can you tell our listeners, Janie, that is for those who don't know, a bit more about this Oireachtas committee process, please, and then tell us what the latest news is?
Okay, a lot to pack into a very short amount of time. It has been an all-party joint committee on assisted dying, and they started their work back in June and concluded their public meetings on I think it's around the 12th of February, and then spent the last month working on their report. It was an all-party committee led by Michael Healy-Rae, and throughout the course of the meetings, they were weekly. I went in to listen and observe every week, as did, I'm sure, many of the journalists who I saw coming in and out. They covered a multitude of different things, but it was a concentration on the constitutional legal aspects, looking at international models, looking at the ethical and moral issues, safeguards, of course, because they're absolutely essential, and really looking at how this could be implemented in Ireland. And what happened after that was the official report was published on the 20th of March, and that was a majority vote for the Oireachtas. In their report, were recommending that government should legislate.
Okay. Okay, Janie, we spoke about this in our last interview, but there is, I believe, no need to have a referendum on the issue of assisted dying, isn't there not?
You're absolutely correct in that. Many of your listeners may remember the terribly sad case of Murray Fleming. Murray Fleming took a case to the Supreme Court. This was back in 2013, so over 10 years ago now. And she was fighting for her constitutional right to die. Sadly, the outcome was that the Supreme Court ruled that while she had no constitutional right to die, the Oireachtas could indeed legislate. So it's taken the 10 years to get the decision support services in place as a result of the Assisted Decision-Making Capacity Act. That is now in place. The committee has done their work, and the government, the prevailing government at the time, now has a recommendation to proceed to legislate. But as you and I both know, there's a general election in the offing, so our work is not yet done. We have to pursue this.
Okay. Okay, we mentioned the general election there. Just before we talk a bit more about the current government in Ireland, Janie, can you tell me if there has been any legalisation of assisted dying around the world since our last interview on Air FM?
Well, as you know, Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, Australia, all of the states in Australia and New Zealand all have legislation that's been in place for quite some time now, and also 10 of the US states. The UK, it's becoming closer, ever closer, equally the same with Scotland, the Isle of Man, Jersey, and of course ourselves. France have undertaken to have this considered. Austria, Spain, Portugal have already passed different stages, and newcomers as well are Slovenia, Finland, Iceland. They're all looking at this too. And there's also a European movement towards having an EU advanced directive, which is common to all EU states. So there's a petition there. So clearly this is something that people across the world now recognize that it should be an option for people at the end of life.
Okay, Jane, you mentioned there all the countries there that assisted dying is legalising. I read an article recently, it was shared by someone on Twitter, saying that the situation in Canada is a bit mad because a lot of people supposedly are seeking assisted dying because of loneliness. Is there any truth to this story, Janie?
Well, I think it's fair to say that if you're in a situation where you are dying, you are bound to suffer a degree of depression as you cope with your diagnosis and possible prognosis. The system in Canada, Darren, is so strict. And, we'll be having a conference at the end of, on the 20th and the 21st of September, where we will be having representatives from Canada here who will go into detail of their legislation and the processes. Social problems exist in many countries, but I think it's disingenuous to actually say people are being offered this. It does not happen. Nobody gets approved for, as they call it in Canada, medical assistance in dying simply because they have a difficult situation, or maybe there's an issue with housing, finances, they need help with mental health support. Assisted dying, medical assistance in dying, is not offered to replace something like that. It just is not happening.
So, have you personally seen a couple of reports like I have saying the opposite of what you're saying?
We read about these instances all of the time. And I would say to any of your listeners, if they have any concerns over a particular article that they have read, please email me a link to that source, and I will ensure that that is correctly answered for them. Because the last thing that we want is for people to be unduly scared by what they're reading, which may not be factually correct. Legislation is needed because legislation will protect people who want to end their lives in very specific circumstances. And the legislation will protect doctors and other health care professionals who help them.
Okay,
But
Janie. Okay, go on, yeah.
I was just going to say there is a danger when reports are circulated that aren't factual, and it causes great upset to people here thinking, gosh, we're going to be like XYZ country. We have our own legislation to be drafted that will ensure that coercion doesn't happen, and also that any extra support that somebody needs, whether it's getting access to palliative care, whether it's support in the home to help somebody's quality of life be improved, all of that can be drafted into legislation and procedures to ensure people get the best possible help to live the best life they can in the time that they've got left to them.
Okay, Janie, I've just have two more questions.
Please.
As you said at the start of the interview, Michael Healy-Rae was the chairman of the Oireachtas committee. Am I right in saying that Michael Healy-Rae, even though he was the chair of the Oireachtas committee, he's actually against on the other side of what you're calling for?
That's right. He has never been shy about making his views known, and that was indeed how he voted in the end.
Okay, I just find that kind of unusual, kind of the way, just the way he issued the report as chairman, and he's actually, he's personally on the other side of the fence as to what his own report was. It's kind of it's kind of ironic, I think, Okay.
Well, it was, but at the same time, I suppose on any committee you need a balance of views, and he was quite clear. What I and many others are relieved about was that, having listened to the evidence, 9 of the committee voted in that we should proceed. And that's what democracy is all about.
Okay. Okay, Janie, it looks like we will have a new Taoiseach soon, and there, as you said, elections happening in a couple of months, and there will be a general election sometime over the next year, possibly a lot sooner. Um, Janie, what are you and End of Life Ireland calling on the current Irish government to do? And are you in any way confident that the issue of assisted dying will progress far within the lifetime of the current government?
I would like to think that it will progress. Whether it progresses far enough is another thing. What we're calling on government to do, now that there are recommendations by the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Assisted Dying, that I believe it's the Minister for Justice and or Minister for Health to issue a memo to government to look at the recommendations, and we are looking for an undertaking for this to be addressed within the first 12 months of the incoming government, because in reality, I don't think anything's going to happen before, and I think we must sadly accept that fact, although we're optimistic. But what can happen in the meantime, Darren, is that there could be a recommendation to begin establishing an implementation group in order that when the government looks at this, a lot of work, in addition to the work of the Joint Committee, has already been done. So an implementation group to be set up is what we would like to see happen within the lifetime of this government to be ready for the next government.